Welcome. And thank you for joining me for another edition of the Reeves Reflection. I am Tony Reeves, and let's get rocking and rolling. And I want to take a moment to talk to you about how the men from my church shaped my life. Now, I know this is going to sound corny because I know a lot of us, when we hear about church, we think about evangelicals or the power churches or the religious, whatever the case may be. But for me, church took on a different meaning because for me, I grew up in rural Arkansas in the deep South. And of course, when you're in that part of the country, and especially I came up during the 70s and the 80s, you're still talking about an area that is still reeling from the aftermath of the civil rights movement, the dismantling of Jim Crow, whatever the case may be. So I can tell you, as a young black man, the church was an integral part of providing safety as well as nurturing for future leaders, whether it be young women or young men. And I found myself in a great position because I never realized it, but I had men there who shaped me in ways I just did not see coming. And of course you won't see it when you're young. You never see the great things or the powerful things that people do for you. You just kind of keep it moving and grooving. But in my case, it was a wonderful thing because when I stop and take a moment to think about the influences that I had when I was in church, 3 men come to my mind. And you would say, well, why just 3? Wasn't it more than 3? I was like, no, there was quite a few. But 3 men came to my mind mainly because of how they impacted my life. The first one I have to think about is Mr. Perry. Mr. Perry it was kind of funny because he had 3 daughters. 2 of them were in my age range, meaning one of them was in my class and the other one was in the class right behind me. We all went to different schools and so forth, but we all grew up together at the same time. But it was funny because, and not that I ever knew it, but when I came back to my hometown during the summer between my freshman and sophomore year of college, Mr. Perry was the first person to actually help me get a summer job. Now, let me be clear when I say this. He worked for like the state of Arkansas, or at least our county, in terms of job placement. And the job that he placed me in, I ain't gonna be in front, didn't like. It was like lifting rice on the back of a barge, 50-pound bags of rice. Didn't appreciate that at all. Lasted only half the day. I was like, yeah, I'm too pretty to be out here throwing around big old bags of rice. But it's kind of funny in retrospect. It's not the fact of me carrying the rice that was impactful. It was the fact that I had a resource readily available in my hometown because, 1, he was from my church. 2, he'd known me for the longest. And 3, it was wild because I didn't have any work experience. I had no skills. I'd never done anything, other than go to school and go to college. But it was powerful to realize that, especially in a place like Pine Bluff, where at one time it literally was listed as one of the toughest places in the country to live because the job market was so bad at the time, that I had access to a resource to help me get a summer job. I wasn't trying to get a job to work for the rest of my life. I just wanted to have me a couple of dollars in my pocket just to make it through the summer. And I often tell people about that, not to tell them about the crazy level of the job that I had, but to really articulate how powerful it was that someone in my church was able to connect me to an opportunity. So that's Mr. Perry. Then I got to take my next step to Mr. Bolden. Mr. Bolden is another one who had 3 kids, and his daughter was, I think, a couple of years behind us. And so I was, of course, everything I'm talking about is almost in relation to children because we all kind of came up together. But you never know the impact of individuals. Mr. Bolden, I always remember because he always had something positive to say about me. When you're listening to adults say, oh, he's so well respected, he's such a mannerable young person, they're really nice and he should go good. After a while, you tune that out when you're a kid. But as I realized when I got much older, it really is powerful to have someone who gives you positive reinforcement. I'm not saying that he's going to sit here and say, Anthony was a knucklehead. He always had something positive to say about me. Every time. And when I got out of high school, went to college and so forth, I just never realized how rewarding that was to know that I had a a male role figure in my life who saw me in a particular life. A lot of times, especially when you're young, you're looking for people who will see you, people who will validate who you are. And so it's nice to have someone who says, you know what? I see you. And for me, that was powerful. I needed someone to see me a lot of times. And for a kid who was an introvert, for a kid who had low self-esteem and had struggled with self-worth, having a positive male role model in your life like that, for me, was powerful. So now that gives me two positives. We have Mr. Perry in terms of employment opportunities, Mr. Bolden in terms of access to positive reinforcement. Then finally, Dr. Walker. Again, relation, 3 kids. It's a magic number 3. His daughter was probably, I think, 2 years behind me and so forth. I don't know why I keep wanting to give references to the kids. Not like you're ever going to know who they are. I always remember Dr. Walker for one specific thing that he did. For those of you who don't know, and when you go into college, it's not uncommon for you to want to be a part of an organization. And for me, I wanted to be a member of Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated, which is the oldest historically Black Greek letter organization of what we refer to as the Divine Nine, the 9 Black fraternities and sororities. Well, he was a member of it. And it was funny because he wasn't like the only person I knew that was a member. I had 2 uncles who were members as well. But it was funny because I still remember, I would come home for the summer, and I think I came home during the summer between my freshman and my sophomore year, as I mentioned before. And, he, of course, asked me the question. Of course, when you're in college, it's kind of funny because once you go to college, the conversations kind of pivot. And I remember him asking me, was I enjoying college? What was it like? I told him, I said, I had an opportunity to go to an interest session for Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity, and I'm hoping I can, get an interview for the spring, so I'm kind of keeping my fingers crossed. So what does he do? He gives me his history book. I mean, literally, he gives me his history book. And it's funny because for those of you who don't know how important that is, the history book or the history of Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity, most fraternities and sororities, they have their own history books. You can't get them at a bookstore. You have to actually get them from a member because they're for members only. He gave me his. And I'm like, wow, he's like, study this book so this way when you have your interview, you're prepared. And at the time, I used to ride the bus back and forth from Pine Bluff, Arkansas to Tampa, Florida, which is like a 24-hour ride. So guess what I did when I got ready to go back to school in the fall? Got on the bus, and I sat in the corner, and I just read this book. This is what was the book. This was the book that kept me preoccupied for the 24-hour bus ride. And so when I got down for the fall, I had something that I could study in addition to my normal studies. When it came time for the spring, I still remember this. When it came time for the spring, and I got the opportunity to go to an interest session, and I filled out my application, and I got the opportunity to be interviewed, I still remember them asking me questions, and I remember breaking out some knowledge from the book that I studied. And even they were like, hey, slow down now. And I had to laugh because it made me feel so special that I had something that I could share based on what was given to me by someone in my church. So for those of you who are sitting here saying to yourself, man, that's not really inconsequential. It doesn't seem like it's very, profound. You have to remember who I am and who I was at that time. Here I am, a young man who, as much as I love my dad to death, he did not provide as much guidance and direction for me and those types of things. These were men doing things what men do. Mr. Perry was, as a man, pointed me in the direction of employment opportunities. Mr. Bolden provided positive feedback. Mr. and Dr. Walker provided me with tools to achieve participating in an organization that would go on to impact me in a positive ways. And these 3 men, reflecting back, shaped me in ways that I didn't even realize I needed, because that's what it meant to have positive men in your life to do the things that they did. And reflecting back, I am so glad I had the opportunity to interact with these individuals because they shaped me in ways I didn't even realize needed to be shaped. All right, everyone. As always, thank you for tuning in to another edition of the Reeves Reflection. My name is Tony Reeves. As always, I enjoy you being here. Make sure you visit me at anthonyreeves.com. And as always, I have to end with my famous question of the day. Are you ready for the Anthony Reeves experience?